Hello guys and girls, welcome back to another episode on the Falcon YouTube channel. Hope you're all doing very, very well, and I'm sure you are very excited for this episode. So price action, keen to get into this. Why is price action king? Why is it key? How has it helped us and how can it help you? That is a question. So we often get questions all the time saying, how do you trade? Why do you look at the charts the way that you do? Why do you have these channels? Why do you have these trend lines? Remember, first and foremost, trend lines are a guide. Price action and patterns are what we're looking at. So it's not the trend lines, that's the guide. It's not the channel itself, it's understanding all the variations before that. So what I wanted to do is give you an insight as to why we see this repeat itself on a consistent basis for years and years and years. So hopefully that gives you more of an insight and opens up your mind to a different level of thinking. So let's get into the chart work. Right guys, so I'm going to get into the chart work now and showcase some things that I believe will give you a very valuable insight and open your eyes up as to why we focus on price action and patterns and why it's so key. What you see on YouTube and things like that, it barely scratches the surface. You see things like channels and all that kind of stuff. It really doesn't even go into anywhere near of much depth as what we do when we go into the strategy, but of course that takes a lot longer to learn. But what I want to show you now is pound dollar. So let's start off on this and I'll show you a few things. So we're here on pound dollar on the daily chart, and let's actually look at a bit of price action and patterns here. So first up, why is price action important? Well, essentially price action repeats itself. But the one thing people fail to understand is that each bit of price action is unique. So if you've read Trading in the Zone, you will understand what I'm talking about. Remember, you're not going to get it candle by candle exactly the same. So let's take a look at this example. So first up, we will utilize this tool. This is bars pattern. Very, very helpful tool regardless of what strategy you trade. So let's take a look at firstly this bit of price action here. So you can see this bit of price action. We'll take it to here before we had that move to the downside. So we've got this channel here. And if we take this bit of price action, like so, let me put it here as well. What can you guys and girls see? What is different or what is similar? If I just put these on top of each other, very, very similar. They're not going to be candle for candle, but can you see that structurally, if I just use the paintbrush tool, structurally, what can you see? You can see the same thing. Does that look similar to this? Well, it's not going to be exactly the same candle by candle. We know that because each bit of price action is unique, but structurally it behaves the same way. Now let's take a look at this in a little bit more detail. So if we just move this part out of the way. So remember, we're looking at this bit of price action here. We've just taken that from that part. So if we was to look at the low, and there's a reason why we target these lows and these short-term, medium and longer term moves, all kinds of moves. There's lots of reasons, but again, that comes in the form of the strategy. But if we look at it at the base level here, and we take a look at what's going on. So if I was to take this bit of price action and bring it to here, and then you see this move here, what do we achieve? We move up, we hit this area. There's a reason why we're focusing on this area. So essentially, this is before, and this is after. So as you can see, structurally, we've moved down, hit the low. This is what we're looking at. Now, if we take this bit of price action that we've taken from here, as you can see, we move it here, we take the same bit of price action, we go to here, we mark on the low like we previously did, let me put it there. What do we achieve? Before this channel, after, like so. So what can you see between these two? What can you see between these two? What is similar? Is the candle by candle the same? Definitely not. Does the structure behave the same way? Yes. Well, there's other variations. Where did it come from? There's all these other questions when you actually trade a strategy that you have to ask. But can you see how just there and then it's exactly the same? these patterns, structures, price action has repeated itself for years. So people often have this misconception that you need all these complicated things to be able to trade. No, you don't. There's more than one profitable way to trade. You'd be naive if you think there's only one way to trade. There's lots of different ways. Are there lots of different ways that suits different people's personalities? Of course. What we found in what we do at Falcon is that this suits most people's personalities because it allows you to trade in a way that is congruent with your personality, which ultimately does breed the highest level of success, which is why we've seen so much progression in our own community. But do you know what? Maybe trading this way might not be for you. It's not for everybody, but trading indicators and trading other things may not be for someone else. So you've got to understand, you've got to find something that works for your personality. But the reason why we like this is because this is something that we can see statistically repeats itself. We're not relying on something that has rejected something before, maybe 10 times, and then it's not relevant anymore. We're looking at the behavior of structures that repeat themselves for years and years and years. And that gives us long-term scalability and sustainability. Well, let's just delete that for now. So you've seen that part. We could easily just cherry pick that. Let's say, for example, we look at this. This is around Brexit. A lot of you would probably know that. Let's go to the daily, see things a bit clearer. So we're now on the daily chart of pound dollar. And let's take this bit of price action. So we take this bit of price action and we take this bit of price action. What do we see? Of course, they're not going to be the same size in candles. So let's make them a similar sort of size. What do we see? Well, on one hand, we've got to move down. We have this structure. We've got to move down. We have this structure. What do we see? Same thing. So you can see this has played out in accordance to the same as this. But does this look identical or does it look similar? That's the key thing. They're not always going to look similar. You see momentum came slightly slower. This came very, very fast. In Falcon, this would be referred to as an impulse. This is very, very corrective, but structurally, it's repeated itself. Which one's cleaner? Of course, this one is cleaner. The move down, clear structure, and the move to the downside. Remember, it's easy to pick direction. It's another thing actually capitalizing on the move itself. That's what you'll learn with strategy. But can you see how price action and patterns consistently repeat themselves? And you can backtest this and see this throughout years and years and years and years, and we'll go back and we can see this further. But if you understand trading in the zone, like I alluded to earlier, it's not always going to be exactly the same because price action is unique. Each bit of price action is unique within itself, but the structure does behave. That's what we can look to correlate. We're so busy trying to correlate oil and USD CAD and gold and Aussie dollar and all these things, but not realizing that the truest correlation is in the behavior of these structures. We can correlate that. We can see how it consistently repeats itself. So is this a slight variation? Is this slightly slanted and this is slightly flat? Of course, again, but that's a variation of strategy that you'll learn when you're trading price action strategies and pattern strategies. So that's just one element there. And I mean, even if we go back, let's look before the drop. Of course, this is a very big drop from 2008. Let me know in the comments if you took advantage of this, by the way. Highly unlikely. This is actually where the year when I first started learning to trade. So going back a lot of years now. And if we take that bit of price action, let's take it to here. Let's not go for the big drop. And we look at this structure. So if we put that there and that we get the same structure again, what do we have? Let's actually get that again where it's played out a little bit more. So let's get it to here so you can see. So what do we have here? Similar in size. Now, price goes through here, but we'll have a different angle. This is actually a slightly different pattern, but you get the point. What happens? This is in 2008. So we've got the move down, this structure, and a drop. The move down, this structure, and a drop. What is the difference? This happened in 2008. It's the same thing. Of course, this was a much bigger drop, but for different reasons. But you can see structure is king. It plays out consistently, regardless of the news. Remember, news creates volatility, not structure. Why is it that there's all this volatility around these structures? Now, I'm not saying that, this pattern is actually moving the market itself, but it's more so understanding the reason why we believe price action is king and why we found it so useful is that rather than trying to understand every single thing that's happening with the Fed and rate announcements and all of this, information that we don't have access to, information that may be priced in, and information that we may not or may understand, why not focus on something that repeats itself regardless of actually understanding that? That gives us more consistency, because the question you want to ask yourself is that why do you care? Why do you want to know the figures of PMI? Why do you want to know if there was less or more jobs created? These are the questions you should be asking yourself. Is it ego, or are you just in this to just have more of an understanding? Do you just want to be a theory-based person? Do you actually want to be a trader? Because at the end of the day, who cares? What you should care about is, are you growing your account? Are you actually moving towards consistency? And can you trade in something that's scalable? That's why we do what we do. So I just wanted to give you more of a raw, brief insight into the thinking behind it, why we look at it, and how it's repeated itself for years and years and years. Let's actually look, I mean, this is 2003 or something, 2002. Let's look at something a little bit older. So we go to pound dollar, let's go IDC, go for a little bit older. So on the weekly chart, so this is pound dollar, a little bit older, of course, less liquidity. You can see it's a lot choppier back then, but when we look at that, so this is what we was looking at before. We only had access to 2002, so here, just before this big channel up and then the drop. But if we look back and we look, let's actually even just look at that structure there, right? So we see 1, 2, double top. A lot of you will be familiar with the double top. This actually just breaks the double top, I can see already, ever so slightly. And then we have a structure here. So this structure here, this whole structure, this is something that we recognize in Falcon, that we look at a lot on a larger degree, on a smaller degree, high time frame, lower time frame, all that kind of stuff. We recognize what is happening here. We see this over and over again. There's actually miniature versions of things. It's crazy how consistent this is. And if you're a Falcon student, you know exactly what I'm talking about at this stage. But can you see how here, what has changed? There's nothing different. It's even so interesting before the 2008 drop of what is happening here in regards to what is happening here. Now, if you're a Falcon student, you'll know exactly what I'm kind of alluding to now, that you should definitely go back and research. But just understanding the level of consistency. And again, the low, before and after. What do we have here? We have another structure and channel, just drawing this on loosely here. Here's the low. What happens? We break the low before we move to the upside, forming a structure that we recognize on a consistent basis. Candle shape, price action, understanding price action is key. You don't need all of this mess and clutter. Doesn't mean that you can't trade with indicators or anything like that, but you don't necessarily need it to succeed, is what I'm saying. Now remember, this doesn't even scratch the surface. We don't come onto the charts and go, right, let's just take this trend line and go, yep, we're going to trade now. There's a whole series of questions and sequence of price action and structures within structures, patterns within patterns, candle shape formations, and justifications as to why we take and build a case of evidence before each trade. But I wanted to give you more of an overview of why we see it consistently play out, regardless of what we're looking at. So as you can see there, we can utilize that to our advantage all the way through. And what you'll see is that a lot of these patterns and price action, they're just either smaller or bigger versions of themselves, repeating themselves on a regular basis. You know, if you look at even just that bit of price action there, if you take that drop and you take this, what's the difference? As you can see, it's the same bit of price action, just even taking that there. Now this one only broke to the low and then it moved to the upside. This one completely broke the low and started to form a new structure, but it's the low that is key. Notice how it either breaks the low and moves to the upside, or completely cleanly breaks the low and makes new lows. So it's just about understanding. It's repeating itself on a regular basis, and there's got to come to a point. I mean, most people when they come into Falcon, they get completely woken up as to how simple you really need to keep it. However, it doesn't mean that it's as easy as putting a few lines on in channels and that's how we trade. There's so many things involved more that you need to understand. And don't get me wrong, it won't be easy. It will take you time. But again, trading as a whole, this is not for the weak, it's for the strong-minded. Most people don't succeed because of their expectations. It's one of the biggest things. They expect things to happen too quickly and wonder why they're not succeeding. So that is pound dollar. I hope that helped give you more of an insight into the price action and why we believe it's king, why we will consistently sustain it, and why we will consistently trade this way. Just another quick thing, let's go for USD CAD. So if we look at USD CAD here, another prime example, you can go back to our older webinars and understand why we look at things the way we do. So here on the weekly chart, let's go to the daily chart. We've got a big move that we're anticipating on USD CAD. very soon, by the way, so don't miss this trade. Really, really key. But look at the price action here. What have we got? Let's do another before and after. So we see this bit of price action here. You can see the low. See this structure. And what do we get? Let's go to the low. So as you can see, same thing. Price moving here, price moving here, same thing. So what are we expecting with this? Now this is a slightly more complex structure as it's not fully committed yet. There's a few things that is happening in here that we are studying, which if you're a Falcon student, you'll know how close it really is. But what we need to establish is that it's easy to pick direction, right? It's easy to pick direction. What happens within this move, that is where the strategy is. So this is more to not so much teach you the strategy, but more so understand that any strategy that you'll learn will take you time, and you need to invest in your education, whether it's a price action strategy, whether it's a support and resistance based strategy, whether it's Fibonacci combined with support and resistance or something else. You need to invest into your education at some point if you actually are serious and you want to succeed. And what we found is that the price action consistently repeats itself. But what you need to just bear in mind is that there is no way that the candle shape will be exactly the same. So you can take that bit of price action and we can find a replica version of it, as I showed you time and time again, like so, but the exact sequence of each tick will never be the same. So what we can learn from this, we can learn the behavior repeats itself, but understanding the variables inside, that comes down to a full strategy. There's psychology involved, management, go-to setups. There's so many things involved that you need to be doing to be able to do that. Probabilities, risk. This is more of to get you of an understanding that it can be much simpler than what you think. But what I would love to know, of course, if you've traded any kind of price action strategies, how you found. Has anybody struggled with them? Have you ever found success with them and then you've added other things in or taken things out? I would love to know. But hopefully this gives you more of an insight into why we do things the way that we do. So that is pound dollar on the FXM or Rwanda data. And then of course the one, if you're looking, because I know some of you will be wondering how do you get the data, you can use IDC or anything else to get more of that data. But that was more just to showcase to you. This is nothing new. This has been repeating itself for years and years and years. It will consistently do that. As long as there's fear and greed and these emotions from human patterns, humans repeat themselves. And all you need to understand is what is that psychology, learn the variations within a move like this. The key question you should be asking, not the direction. Remember, anyone can pick direction to an extent. How do I actually capitalize on the move? What strategy do I need in place? What management do I need in place? How am I going to manage my psychology? And how can I safely capitalize on that move? Because after all, that's what it's about. It's not about knowing everything. It's not about having every single bit of information at your fingertips. It's about taking as much confusion out of the market as possible, keeping things as simple as possible, and understanding that psychology will be one of the biggest factors for you once you get these concepts. So hopefully that helps. Price action has been a big part of my journey from the very, very beginning. Even when I first started in 2008, price action was involved, patterns were involved. For those of you that were at the Falcon conference, you'll see the very first manual that I had in 2008. And it's been such an enjoyable ride since then. Back then I was trading support and resistance, and I was trading indicators and all kinds of things. And I've moved on to other courses in the past as well, because you always want to learn something new. And as I've developed as a trader and gone through and worked on my mindset, you can't be naive and think that you know everything. So after I tried various different things and was involved in some incredible communities, I really solidified it to myself of why patterns as a whole was so important to me, and me just stripping things back and following what I know, what I've back tested and what I've learned myself is the way forward. And it's an absolute pleasure to be able to share that experience with the Falcon community and see how much success has come out of it. So really hope you enjoyed this, and again, we would love to know your number one takeaway. Right guys, so I really hope you enjoyed that. I really enjoyed actually going through that, and it's just another reminder for ourselves of why we look at the markets the way that we do. Honestly, I couldn't, once you see it, you can't unsee it. I couldn't think of trading another way. Remember, it doesn't have to be as complicated as what you think, and when you learn to keep things simple, that is how you succeed. Remember, Picking direction is one thing. Learning how to capitalize on a move, that is a completely different thing, which is why you need strategy in place. But this is why we focus on the price action and the pattern itself. I'd love to know your number one takeaway and your opinion on things like price action, if you've traded it before and how it's helped you and things like that. So let me know, and if this has opened up your mind as well. And remember, don't miss this trade. Don't miss USD CAD, regardless of how you're trading right now. It's very, very close, so keep an eye out for that. But guys and girls, hope you enjoyed this episode and hope this actually answers a lot of questions. We get so many on a regular basis about, do you trade trend lines and things like that? Look, you can't be so naive to think that we just put a trend line. There's so many things that build up to that you have to build a case of evidence, you have to understand risk, you have to understand your management, there's psychology involved, there's variations of patterns that repeat itself and you need to know what they are. Then you need to have a plan. There's so many other things. So if you've been thinking about trading a price action way, then of course we have the step-by-step process and you're gonna absolutely love it. But if not, hope this has provided value to you, and I'll see you guys and girls in the next episode. Take care.